Hello and welcome to a look at Gobliiins for the Amiga, a game that was released by Coktel Vision. Henceforth, by the way, I'm just going to call it Gobliiins. The three eyes in the title of the game signifies that you are in control of three characters, but more on that in a moment. The plot, as the intro may have implied, is that the kingdom of whatever it's called is a happy, cheerful place. Peace and prosperity has been prospering for years and years and years, and everyone's happy and everything is hunky-dory. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the king goes into a bit of a fit. Slowly but surely he goes bananas, coconut, and absolute bonkers within a relatively short amount of time. Surprisingly, he is very quickly diagnosed with being under the effect of a voodoo curse. Must be something that happens enough in this kingdom to have people being able to diagnose it so quickly. But that is not relevant. What is relevant is that, of course, they need someone to go and find some help. And they employ the goblins to go and find the wizard Niak and hope that he can help them find a cure for the king's madness. This game, for some bizarre reason, is listed as a point-and-click adventure, which is only very, very partially accurate. It is a point-and-click puzzler where the different scenes you are puzzling your way through have some connection of some description, and that would be the adventuring part. But the forefront gameplay mechanic is definitely solving puzzles. The three characters you have available are Dwayne, who is a technician. He can pick up items and he can use items, but he's not particularly strong, so he can only carry one item at a time. Then you have BoBo, who's a warrior, and he likes to punch stuff. Besides being able to punch stuff, he has the very, very useful ability of being able to climb things. And finally, you have Hooter, who is a magician, and he can cast spells on stuff, and depending on what he's casting the spells on, will have various different effects. These three combined will have to work their way through 22 scenes in order to complete the game. Each scene has a certain amount of puzzles or items that has to be worked out or gathered in order to complete the scene and be allowed to progress to the next scene. Let's do the technical side of things. From a graphical point of view, this game has a sort of cartoonish fairy tale style of graphics. It's very, very pleasing to look at by and large. The individual components are easy to identify as being what they are portrayed to be, and the characters and all that kind of stuff is very funky, cartoonish looking, and suits the game style quite well. There's a certain amount of subtle animation going on from time to time, and while it is not necessarily done with several hundred frames of animation, it fits the game and suits the game perfectly fine. No complaints on the graphical side of things. When it comes to the sound side, there's no music, so that is very easily bypassed. But the sound effects, this could be down to personal preference, but I don't find the sound effects to be particularly enjoyable by and large. I find that the quality of the sound effects employed are a bit average to low. Certain of the supposedly funny sounds sound rather unpleasant to my ears, at least. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm unhappy with the sound effects, but I'm definitely not enjoying them as much as I perhaps would want to. The game is exclusively mouse controlled, and you use the left click to move about on the different screens and to select characters. You can either select the characters by clicking directly on them in the game field, or you can click on the portrait bubble thing in the lower middle of the screen to cycle between the characters. Right click will cycle between a character's abilities, so if you have the warrior selected, right click will cycle between walking somewhere and punching stuff. It's all very basic and very simple, and you would assume that it just works. But it doesn't always just work. I was mentioning before that there's a certain amount of subtle animation going on various different screens, and unfortunately, depending on how many animations are going on, the controls can start to suffer. Personally, I do not feel that there's enough active graphics on the screen to justify that the game should struggle to react to what you're trying to do with your mouse, but that is definitely the case, and certain scenes where you have somewhat tight timing related elements to a puzzle, if an animation goes off at the same time as you're trying to solve the puzzle, it can negatively affect your ability to do so, which I find completely and utterly unforgivable. The gameplay mechanic of having to solve different puzzles on the different screens could be perfectly enjoyable by itself. But of course, you have limited energy. If you look at the bottom of the screen just above the panel but below the game field itself, there's a thin line indicating your energy. And every single time you get something wrong, you will lose a certain amount of energy. And on certain scenes, your characters can get sapped or obliterated in other ways, forcing you to start from that scene again. Now, that is perfectly fine as such if it wasn't for the fact that 90% of all puzzles in this game are completely and utterly obscure. It's getting to the point where you ask yourself whether Coktel vision was affected by Coktel vision when they designed the puzzles in this game. The game doesn't come with a save feature, so it gives you a password after you have completed a scene so you can carry on from that point. But unfortunately, it also keeps track of your energy level for a given scene, so you can get to a new scene with preciously little energy and preciously few attempts at completing a new scene. So you find yourself restarting the game, hoping to be able to progress with more energy so you have more chances at later scenes. And that unfortunately is an intentional mechanic, because that is done in such a way to give the game longevity. If you're the type of person who absolutely love trial and error gameplay, or if you are the type of person that love to see the different goblins respond to being zapped, burned, or hit with whatever else they can be hit with, then you might find this game somewhat enjoyable. But as far as I can gather from various different comments, an awful lot of people find the puzzles to be so incredibly obscure and obtuse that interest fades very, very quickly. Added to the fact that the Amiga version is not optimized in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't support multiple drives, you are left with a bit of a half-hearted effort. Observant viewers will likely notice that this video is significantly longer than what I usually put up on the channel, and that is for a very good reason. I have mentioned it before, but let me re-emphasize that I do make these videos because I enjoy making them. If I happen to be able to entertain people in the process, so much the better. But if I didn't enjoy what I'm doing, I wouldn't be doing it. It would be completely and utterly pointless. I do create an awful lot of stuff that never sees the light of day on the channel because I have predetermined that it is not working or it's not good enough or whatever else might be the case. Sometimes you just have to try and do something slightly different and see if it actually works and if people actually like that kind of content. So you potentially could put a bit more effort into going in that direction. So what I've done is I have done a complete playthrough of this game. And if you have no interest in watching that, or if you have interest in playing the game for yourself, then you can safely stop watching this video here. I decided to do the playthrough for content reasons, but also to showcase the wonky and obscure nature of most of the so-called puzzles in this game, and unfortunately also how the controls can be affected by graphics going on. It is something that I've tried to limit very heavily in the following video, but it does happen from time to time. So on that note, after the editing cut, I will be jumping to the playthrough of Gobliiins. Yes, I decided to do a commentated playthrough of this game. So on the first scene, we have to get the warrior to punch the right-hand part of the archway in order to knock down the horn, so we can get our technician friend to blow the horn, which I will attempt to get him to do by picking up the horn first, of course, and then switch to the use effect and just use it. You can use it anywhere on the screen, doesn't matter where you do it. That of course will cause the branch to fall down, which you will have to get the magician to turn into a pickaxe by casting a spell on it even, which of course makes perfect sense. Once you pick up the pickaxe, you will be allowed to move to the next scene. Sometimes the game is not overly keen on responding to what you're trying to get it to do, so picking up the pickaxe was more challenging than it should be. Next scene, you need to get over to the glinting bit in the cave on the left-hand side of the screen, and of course there's a big hole in the bridge, so you need to create a bridge. You do that by having the magician cast his spell thing on the second and fourth apple, looking from the left, and then get the warrior to punch the apples so they fall down. That way the technician can pick them up and drop them in the gap of the bridge, thereby creating a bridge, of course. Poor technician has to carry all this heavy stuff around. Because of course you can only carry one object at a time. Either you have to make sure to drop whatever he's already carrying, or try to hope that he will actually drop the item he's holding when he's picking up the new item, which I found can be rather unreliable. Another thing that's interesting, you can choose to drop the first apple, but the second apple has to be used on the bridge for him to actually drop it. He will just put it down on the spot if you try to put it down. So, time to pick up the pickaxe so we can use it to knock out the diamond from the cave thing. Which required a bit more effort than I anticipated. So we pick up the diamond, as it's called in this game, spelling being what it is, and that allows us to go back to the wizard's house. And all we have to do is to show him that we got a diamond, and then he will let us into his house. Simple as. Inside his house, we have to actually give him the diamond because he's too lazy to get up and take it out of our hands. So the first thing we do is the leftmost plant, cast a spell on it so the warrior can climb up. But he can't get to do what he needs to do because the plant on the right hand side will bite him. So we need to make sure to feed this plant, and that is why we need pot 1, because it contains a flying bug of some description that we can feed to the plant, thereby making sure it doesn't bite the warrior when he tries to move past it. It is now safe for the warrior to move to where he needs to go, which is to go and punch the book so that the technician can get up and hand the diamond over to the wizard. One thing of note is when the game is active, or when you have one character doing one thing, you can't do anything else. So it would have been nice if you could set the warrior to go and punch the book, and at the same time set the technician to go and pick up the diamond. But you are not allowed to do such things. One thing at a time. So the technician can now climb the book and hand the diamond over to the wizard. Attempt to, at least. It has to be somewhat precisely done. We finally got his attention. And he sends us on a quest to gather some items in order to create a cure for the king. As we are told here. This is one of those time-consuming puzzles that needs to be done in a specific order. The mask that is lying on the path, you can use it to make the hunchback giggle like an idiot, but it has no gameplay relevance, so I prefer not to make use of it. But you need to get the wizard to cast a spell on this branch kind of thing, so it grows. So the warrior can climb up it and gain access to the statue's face. That is, of course, very, very important, because the statue is an important element of this puzzle. We need the magician up on the left hand side of the screen later, so I just moved them back. Related to what I was saying on the previous screen, that you can't do multiple actions at the same time. You want to try and anticipate what you have to do, so you can minimize the amount of time you spend. The warrior can now climb this line thing that we created by casting a spell on the protruding object. So now he is in position. And now we need to get our technician friend to stand in front of the statue's mouth. And then we will punch the left eye of the statue in order to get it to eject its tongue, which is going to be very, very relevant very shortly, because the wizard will have to cast a spell on this metal thingy on top of the coffin in order to wake up what is inside the coffin. But of course, what is inside the coffin is very, very scary, so if the characters are on the same game field line as this zombie thing, they will be scared of their skull and lose energy, but because we are on a different level, gameplay level, it doesn't affect the energy. The wizard will still respond to being scared, but he will not actually burn any energy. So we need to move the two other characters onto the tongue and then have the warrior punch the eye, raising the tongue. Because the zombie walks relatively slowly, I decided to shorten this section a bit. He will scare the hunchback, which will drop a mushroom, which is one of the components we need in order to get a cure for the king, and then we have to wait for the zombie to walk back to his grave. When he's a certain amount of distance away, you can punch the eye again, lowering the other characters so the technician can go and pick up the mushroom. And then it's just a question of waiting for the zombie to get back into his coffin before you can exit the level. Which I decided to cut short. Again, was just waiting for him to walk, which is not particularly interesting. Next up is this little sequence with the spiders, and as logic dictates, you will have the warrior climbing up this spider web in order to gain access to the two lines of the spider web at the upper shelf. Now he has to punch one of the two lines of spider web in order to raise this spider up. If he pulls the wrong line, a stone will fall down on his head, and the game contains a random element because it is completely random which of the two lines he has to pull. Now the technician has to go and gather the pistol, because we need to get this spider to move, and we're not shooting the spider, we are just scaring it with the sound of the pistol. No spiders were harmed during the making of this video, which of course gives us access to the pillow, so we can drop the pistol because we're not done with it yet, and go and pick up the pillow. A pillow, of course, is a soft object, so it can cushion the fall of other objects, and that is what we need it for. So we park the pillow on the center bit here between the bridges, and then we have the wizard cast a spell on the mutated spider in order to get it to drop a potion, which is the second component for the cure for the king's madness. So we pick it up, And then we go and pick up the pistol because we need to get rid of the large spider in front of the exit. And we do that exactly the same way by scaring it with the sound of the pistol. So on this scene we need a flower thing. But of course we need to plant the seeds so we can get it to grow. First and foremost, we need to get the wizard to levitate the pouch of seeds onto the branch before the technician can go and pick it up. Then we move him over to the right hand side because he will be needed there in a moment or two. By the way, in case you are noticing that my energy level is a bit lower than it was when last we left off, I accidentally fired the pistol and did some damage to my technician, but it's not relevant. Now we need to get the technician over near the scarecrow because we need to move the warrior over besides him. And then we need to get the technician to plant the seeds. But of course, once the seeds are planted, some birds will come in and try to eat the seeds. So you need to punch the scarecrow in order to scare the birds away. And I nearly got this one wrong. But if any of the birds eats any of the seeds, then you have to replant the seeds. After that, it's getting the wizard to cast a spell on the second cloud, which will cause it to rain on the seeds, allowing the plant to grow so you can pick it up and hand it over to the wizard, which will appear as soon as we got the flower. If you cast a spell on any of the other clouds, you'll get zapped by a lightning bolt, which is not particularly useful. Yeah, the game was not overly keen on letting me picking up that bloody flower, so it took a few attempts. The wizard has now appeared, and we can go and hand over the item so he can cure the king. But of course, he is not our friend, so he reveals his true identity and tosses us in the dungeon, which of course we have to escape. In order to escape the dungeon, we have to get the wizard to cast a spell on the skeleton you can see there, which will get the skeleton to start moving about, and then it will toss us a bone, which casts a spell on, turning it into a flute, because of course, why not? Then we take our technician friend to pick up the flute, and as we've all seen in various different comic books, if you play a flute in front of a snake, it will raise itself up. So that is exactly what we are going to be doing. The warrior can now climb up the snake and reach the upper level of the screen. But we still have to get the other two goblins up there in some way. And in order to do such a thing, we have to get them to stand on this very specific board and then have the warrior go and punch the pile of stones he's close by. And you can see for yourself what happens. It makes a certain amount of sense. The puzzle on this screen is not particularly illogical, except for the initial bit with the skeleton converting a bone into flute. Yeah. Anyway, we have escaped the dungeon. So we are attempting to get back into the wizard's house, but there's a big nasty guard dog in front of it. And all we need to do is to go and gather the meat you can see at the top of the screen, but we have to make sure to stay well clear of the guard dog. Once we picked up the meat, we just use it on the spot in order to move to the next scene. This is one of the longer scenes, and the first thing we have to do is to place the meat in front of this hole in the tree. This will be picked up by a tentacle of some description, and now it is safe to pass that hole, which both the magician and the warrior will need to do. We need to get the magician to cast a spell on this twig in order to get it to go. And then we need the technician to pick up the windsock. Which we'll go and do. It is very important to pick it up before you do any of the other steps, because if you haven't got it picked up, you can't get back to it later on. So, yeah. Now to move the warrior over, and as you can probably see, there's something to pull on the twig. We got the wizard to cast the spell on in order to grow. Which means, of course, you can now use the branch to be sent up to the next tier of the tree. And you need to do the same with the technician. And that is why it's important to have the windsock now, because getting down again can be dangerous and rather painful. Casting a spell on the cork with the wizard even in order to get it loose so that the technician can pick it up. And you would likely use a cork to pluck something, which is exactly what we're going to do. We pick up the cork and put it in one of the two holes you can see at the top of the tree, because we need to limit the amount of escape routes available. Hereby done. And now the warrior can be the true hero he is and go, after we picked up the windsock, because we need to be prepared, he can go and punch a poor bird in the face, feeling very, very heroic in the process. The bird, of course, will try to escape, and that is where the technician needs to use the windsock to capture the bird. We now got a bird. So we are back in front of the wizard's house, and the guard dog, of course, is still here. So we need to move the technician in possession of the bird, or in a position where he's close to the dog without being so close that he gets barked at. And then we need the wizard to move in a similar position, staying very, very close to the tree to avoid agitating the dog. Then we use the bird on the dog, because the dog seems to be quite enamored by the bird, but only for a certain amount of time. So we need to quickly cast a spell on the dog using the wizard in order to allow the dog to grow wings so it can fly away with the bird. Yeah. And then it's just a case of having the warrior going over and doing what the warrior does best, which is to punch stuff. So let us punch the side door in order to get back into the wizard's house. The first thing we need to do in here is to gather this feather from the ink wall. And I mean, everyone's got ticklish feet, even skeletons apparently. So that is what we will do. Tickle his feet with a feather. And out comes a key. But in order to make sure that his hand is occupied, we need to get this ball and cup, which I accidentally use instead of handing over to him, so causing our friend to take a bit of energy damage because he bonks himself using the ball and cup. Yeah. The skeleton is now entertained, so we can go and pick up the key. And we will need to use that key on the cage at the top right corner of the screen, because you can see there's a hand sticking out from time to time. And that is actually a trapped imp. Who seems to be very, very happy about being freed. But we are not quite done yet. The feather we used to tickle the skeleton with, we need to get transformed into a fly swatter. And then this wasp which will appear. We need to give it a good smacking with the fly swatter. Eventually, at least. Come on, little thing. I do find that slightly amusing in the way it looks. But Wizard will have to go and cast a spell on the stunned wasp, turning it into a dart, which of course makes perfect sense. So the technician will have to pick up the dart and use it on the picture of the wizard. Reading the voodoo doll that was used to drive the king out of his mind. But before we are done here, we need to pick up this specific potion because we will need that later. In this screen, we need to get past the wizard. You can see there's an opening in the the stone fence, and if any of the goblins show themselves there, they will get killed by the wizard. So we use the wizard to cast a spell on the branch to reveal a bird call, which we will use on with the technician on the X in order to call a bird so it will rest on the X. We need to get the wizard up there, and then while waiting for the bird to finish resting on the X, we can get the warrior up next to the wizard because he will be needed momentarily. The technician will have to move down and remember to pick up the potion again because it is a very, very important item. One of the eggs will semi-hatch, so we need to use the warrior to punch the egg in order to help it hatch a bit more, and then use the wizard to cast a spell on the somewhat hatched eggs in order to carry him over to the right-hand side of the screen. But of course we need to get the other two goblins over on the same side. So making sure to get the warrior in close position to the gate thing before we start moving the technician. I screwed it up slightly, so there's an editing cut sorting that out. First and foremost, of course, we need to get the wizard to actually levitate this horn out of the way, so the technician doesn't end up stepping on it. The technician will now drink the potion we picked up in the previous scene, which is an invisibility potion, so he can walk past without being zapped by the wizard. Of course, he now needs to get the warrior past the wizard without being zapped, and in order to do that we need to pick up this carrot and put it next to the mole hole in order to get the mole to pop its pretty face out so the wizard can cast a spell on it. I have edited it out for YouTube sensibility reasons, but he basically turns the mole into a naked woman who will attract the attention of the wizard so the warrior can get past. We are now in the carrot patch scene. We have some carrots which are just been planted, and of course we need to encourage them to grow. So we need to pick up this branch with the technician after having cast a spell on the lower stone thing with the wizard to create a ladder. Now we need to poke this branch into the hole at the top of the platform, which will cause a watering can to appear. And now we have to go and water some carrots. But as you can see, the carrots are only popping up slightly. And of course we need to get them fully out of the ground. So we need some magic help to do that. The wizard will now have to cast spells on the carrots in order to get them fully out of the ground. And we are looking for two specific carrots, one of them containing a key and the other containing a keyhole, and you can likely imagine that you need to combine the two in order to progress. I didn't mind losing a bit of energy because the carrot immediately in the right hand middle of the screen, if the wizard casts a spell on that carrot, will produce yet another naked woman who will blow us some kisses and get restore our energy even. But again, because of potential YouTube sensibilities, I didn't want to showcase that, so it's been edited out. If you're that keen on seeing that scene for yourself, well, you know what to do. Anyway, we spawned a carrot that has a key in its nose, so of course the warrior will have to go and punch the carrot in order to get it to drop the key, so that the technician can pick up the key and insert it in the keyhole, and we can finish this level. Please notice the energy bar. It will go up fully shortly. Alright, full energy. So we are now in the rat's den or nest or whatever. But the rat is sound asleep and we need to get his attention. There's a box of matches and there's a cannon there, so you can likely imagine that we need to combine them in a certain way. So we need to go and pick up the matches, place them close-ish to the cannon, because we will need them to light the cannon. But of course it can't be that simple. So we need to get the warrior to punch the cannonballs to get one cannonball free. But first he needs to punch the cannon to angle the cannon so you can actually put a cannonball in it with a technician. So punch the cannonballs, go down with the technician, pick up the cannonball, put it in the cannon. If the game will allow me to pick up the cannonball, that is. But of course, because a cannonball has a certain amount of weight to it, it will cause the cannon to lower again, so you need to get the warrior to punch the cannon one more time, or firing the cannon will actually kill the rat. Well, it won't kill it, but it will cause you to fail the scene. So the cannon is now at an angle where we can safely fire it, and we use the matches to light the fuse and fire off the cannon. Doing that will shoot down one of the carrots, which we need to load into the cannon and fire into the cooking pot. There will be a few of those processes that I've cut a bit short because you need to do the same basic thing a few times in order to be done with this scene. The cannon has to be pointing straight this time, or the carrot will end up in the torch holder thing, which is what you don't want it to do. You want it to end up in the cooking pot. And then you want to use the matches on the cooking pot to make sure the carrot starts boiling, because the smell of that will get the attention of the rat. Then you have to repeat the process of getting a cannonball, put it in the cannon, angle the cannon, fire the cannon, in order to get yet another carrot to be knocked down. This time we will get the wizard to cast a spell on the second carrot in order to transform it into something useful. The carrot is now an ear trumpet, so we can actually tell the rat of our plight. And he will help us by giving us a mallet. There's a gong on the middle level, so yeah, you can likely imagine that we need to use the mallet on the gong. That will cause a pendulum, whatever it's called, to spawn, which is an important item for the next scene, so we need to make sure to get that picked up. You can't leave any scene before you've done everything you need to do in a certain scene, so it would be impossible to miss it eventually. But we are now in a scene with a floating statue, and we need to start by picking up the pebble on the left hand side and place it on the nicely located X. Then we have to get the wizard to cast a spell on the pebble twice in order to create a staircase. If I can get him to do it, that is. Next up, we need to get the wizard to go up the staircase and cast a spell on the leftmost palm tree thing, which of course logically will turn into a pickaxe. We now need to get the warrior to punch the pickaxe so it will fall down, so the technician can make use of it. We now need to get the pendulum, whatever it's called. But of course, because the two items are on top of each other, picking up the right item is a bit cumbersome, so we have to put down the pickaxe out of the way. But then we use the pendulum to indicate where we need to use the pickaxe. Basically, if you use it on the correct spot, the pendulum will go absolutely crazy, and the technician will point out that this is where we need to dig. So, pick up the pickaxe and start digging. I need to do it a few times in order to get through. We are now in the twin-headed dragon's den, which is likely one of the most annoying scenes in the entire game. First and foremost, we have to get the warriors to go over and punch this pile of logs in order to knock one of them down, because the technician will need to pick it up. You may have noticed there is a trap in front of the bridge, and we need to get that trap triggered, and of course you don't want to do that with your hands or feet. Or feet even, I think it's called. So we use the log for that purpose. But the log has a second purpose, and that is to be converted into something different. So we need to get it back up on the top level. And then get our wizard friend to cast a spell on it. Eventually, at least. Which of course turns the log into a deodorant, making absolutely perfect sense. But there's a bag of seeds that we need to get, and we need the wizard to levitate the seeds so the technician can reach them. Anything related to that shelf he is going to be casting the spell while standing on is in danger of being flamed by the dragon. So basically you need to do whatever you're doing and then click on the steps in order to quickly move away from the shelf so you don't get flamed by the dragon. And this is where I was having some issues, not initially, but later on, because we need to go back to that shelf a few times. And got actually flamed by the dragon because the game did not respond me clicking like an idiot, tried to move away from the shelf. But we need to use this pouch of seeds on the top level, because that will cause a foot to appear, which of course makes perfect sense. So quickly pick up the deodorant, because of course feet are smelly, so they need a good spraying, which apparently kills the foot. So we now have a dead foot we can pick up. Eventually, at least. We need to get that foot roasted, and that's what we got a dragon for. And as I was saying, I was trying to get away. So this happened a few times, which is rather unfortunate. The dragon will now flame the foot, so it turns into a roasted foot, which is actually something we need to get past the bridge, because the bridge is not a bridge, it is a trap. So by feeding it the foot, it has now been satisfied that we can walk across it without risk of being eaten ourselves. So we need this dagger. And guess what? It has to be lit on fire by the dragon. So back on the shelf and back having issues trying to move away from the dragon flaming the dagger. Good fun. So we have to pick up the dagger, and yes, I'm having issues getting away from the shelf yet again. So we'll take a bit more energy damage, unfortunately. I tried to redo the scene several times, but I had the same issue, so I just left it as it was. But we're back at the statue. So we need to use the flaming dagger at the medallion thing on the statue. And then we need to drop the flaming dagger on his left hand. We now need to move away from the hand so the statue can obliterate the voodoo doll thing in order to reveal a key. Anytime now. And we need to pick up on that key and insert it somewhere rather unpleasant. I would find it rather unpleasant, at least. What do I know? Insert the statues right here. Then all we need to do is get all three goblins over to his left hand, and he will blow them out of the scene. That is the way you progress from this scene. One at a time, because of course you can't give multiple characters orders at the same time. So, thankfully the walk is not particularly long. I have to stand on the fingers though. Come on, up you go. Please. Maybe today. And sometimes if you're clicking far away from what you are trying to interact with, the game doesn't really care. It doesn't seem to respond at all. But we got there eventually. Now we need to get the ultimate weapon apparently. We are facing a writer who's got a bit of a writing block, and we need to entertain him in order to get him to be encouraged to write a book. First we get a false nose and try to make him laugh a bit by equipping that. We get some response out of him, but not much. So we need to get the warrior even to go up and punch the bunch of bananas. Good old slapstick humor. Then we need to get the technician to pick up the banana, and you can imagine what he's going to use the banana for. Needs to move the wizard away, unfortunately, because the game would rather have me clicking on the wizard than picking up the banana. Yeah. Use the banana on the writer. This he finds highly amusing apparently, but we still need to entertain him a bit more. So we have a bar of soap, which I managed to pick up. And then of course we eat the bar of soap, making us blow bubbles out of every crevice in our face. And apparently the writer finds that so incredibly amusing that he gets his writing ability back. He then writes us a book that we need to pick up, because that's an important part for the next scene. A book called Witchcraft. So in order to exit the scene, we need to get the wizard to cast a spell on the castle gate. In this scene, we need to get the ultimate weapon, and we have to get it in a bit of an interesting way. First, we have to get the wizard to go down in front of this heraldry thing on the statue and cast a spell. This will cause a lever to pop up. Then you have to get the warrior to go and punch the lever, because he likes punching things, of course. Causing a set of steps to come down. So now you need to get the technician to go and read a passage of witchcraft for the giant. After, of course, we have unblocked his ear, so you can actually hear what we are reading for him. So we need to get the wizard to get this cork out of the giant's ear. Apparently this book is so incredibly amusing that the giant is crying from laughter. which of course is important because we need to catch those tears. In the top left tower, you can barely see it. There's something sticking out, which is a bit of bait. It's like a fish, but it is called bait. So we will go and pick up a set of bait. And then we will place it near the right-hand side of the screen on the same level as the bowl you can see. And if you think we need to use the bowl to catch the tears of the giant, you would be completely correct. But we need to lure out a monster, and we use the bait for that. Put down the bait, pick up the bowl. Being of course mindful of where the tears landed before, so that's why we'll replace the bowl so we can catch the tears, and then we'll go up and read from witchcraft yet again. There's no visible change to the bowl, but once you pick up the bowl, it will say tears. And we now need to throw those tears at this monster over here in order for the monster to dissolve and reveal the ultimate weapon, which we were told we needed. Which is a slingshot, or catapult as the game calls it. Obviously having issues picking it up, because two items too close to each other can give those kind of issues. Onwards to the next scene. We need to use the slingshot we acquired at the bunch of bananas, so that the warrior can now go and punch the lever thing. Some people call them levers, I call it a lever. I think it sounds better that way, but maybe I'm incorrect. Whatever the case, warrior will go and do what warrior does best, which is to punch stuff. Lifting the gate, and a fish will come out, and now we just need to get our 3 goblin friends to step on the fish in order to complete the scene. By the way, I do apologize, I noticed the sound effects went completely bonkers for some bizarre reason in parts of this, some of these scenes, and I couldn't work out how to get around it. Do apologize about that. I could have muted the entire stuff, but I saw no need for it. Come on, wizard friend. Step on the fish. And we are now finally going to be facing off against the evil wizard who's busy polluting the water with his unpleasant potions. So, we need to start by using the slingshot or catapult, whatever you call it, against the wizard. It will knock him into the pot, and the technician seems to find that highly amusing, but unfortunately the wizard doesn't. So he will grab hold of the technician, and we now need to get him freed. In order to do so, we have to get our wizard friend to cast a spell on a thing that creates a staircase thing, so he can go up and cast a spell on whatever the wizard turned into, which of course will let go of Technician, but the wizard is now going to be rather annoyed and grab hold of the wizard instead. And we now need to free the wizard. In order to do that, we have to get the slingshot and shoot at the rope above the pot. And then go and pick up the piece of rope. And use it near the skeleton bird's wing. Because of course we need to get the wizard freed. And Mr. Punchy will have to go and do that by going and punch whatever the evil wizard turned into. Come on, get it attached, please. Hurry! Now this sack, which is so obviously placed in the middle of the screen, is something that is very important, and we'll need to make use of it momentarily, but we need to get the warrior to climb up and yet again do what the warrior does best, which is to punch stuff. Wizard friend doesn't like being punched, so he turns into a spider and grabs hold of the warrior and has him dangling in a bit of spider web. Still, Technician needs to take the sack and place it underneath where the warrior is hanging. Not for the purpose of the warrior, but for the purpose of... You will see for yourself. He now needs to get the slingshot, which we left over by the pot. And shoot at the spiderweb holding the warrior to get the warrior free. This time the evil wizard will not grab hold of any of our three friends, so we need to get the warrior out of the way of the sack and get the Technician down to stand near the sack. Now it's time to get our wizard friend to go up and cast a spell at the spider. Causing him to turn into multiple spiders, which will be caught in the sack we placed underneath, and then pick up the sack with the Technician and use the sack to showcase that we have captured a wizard in a sack. And that's the final bit of the game. Time to be appreciated as the heroes we are with a spell parade. You even get to see our wizard friend being trapped in a glass bottle. So, anyone watching all the way to the end, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care, and see you next time. Bye bye for now.